All right. So what we're covering on at this point is just to go over ranges, hand grips, and a few attacks that you can use if you're starting out, basically. So forearm, gauntlets, obviously. So we're going to use this tree, because I hate it, as my pal. So long grip, backhand back here. Important thing about this is usually if your gauntlet can do it, I hold it so that these last couple fingers are off the end. I don't use a butt spike because I like to have the extra range. If you have a butt spike, you can't do this grip because you'd be stabbing your own hand. So, which you're not supposed to do. If you have that grip though, what you can do with it is when you throw a shot, you can twist it out to get a couple more inches. You can have it in there in the grip of your hand. Now, obviously having a bit of finger strength and forearm strength helps a little bit. This polearm's about 4.5 pounds, not super whippy. I like heavier ones, but I couldn't find a heavier rattan. So it's a little light, but whatever. The long grip basically is anywhere where your hand's back here for the backhand. I like the left hand back. And in this kind of range. You can use it for a thrust if you're trying to do something like that, but generally speaking, it's going to be something like this. When you get into a closer range, like a B range, which should be somewhere around, here somewhere, you'd be something like this. Grip about 18 inches apart. You're going to be somewhere mid-level on the weapon. You could be a little closer, a little farther, depending on where you're at. The way I try to equate that is if you throw a baseball to someone and they go to catch it, they don't do the math in their head on how to catch the ball actively. They just do it. You figure out how the arc's going to go and you go over there and you try to catch it. Even if you're really bad at catching a baseball, you're going to get pretty darn close to it. And that's all you really have to do with a weapon, generally speaking, too, is just get pretty close and you've got a little bit of wiggle room from the bottom of the blade to the top to figure out how to hit them. So you only have to go like basically to here, that's about mid blade. If I'm out here, take a step in and right there, mid blade again, with just a tiny little bit of example of a movement. The mid grip is really useful because most people tend to do this kind of block, which is garbage. You can't do much with this because it's too close to your body, doesn't give you good angles, and it's slow, it's hard to move properly. Can't even do it wrong, right? And it just kind of doesn't really do things. If you have a panic block situation where you just can't move your hands right, it can be good to keep you alive for one, but it's just generally bad. You should get more used to this because you can move this around tighter spaces. You can move it out to cut the angles more. You can still throw shots from it, whereas this is going to be super awkward for a shot. This is very easy for a shot. So generally it's good to keep your hands about yay far apart. If you're in super close, that's where you're going to be right on top of somebody, basically. This is if you're right on top of the shield. If you assume that the camera is the person's shield, I'd be off to the side of it a bit. I can cover a wrap, I can cover a flat snap, I can do a backhand pretty easily, all with it just right in front of me, using their shield as my shield. So, how would you apply that at a longer range or pellet? Well, moving hand grips tends to be one of the things that's harder for people in general to get used to. The best way to do that is every time I take a step to close range or every time someone else takes a step towards me to close range, I'm adjusting grips. Same thing when they back out. So if I'm way out here, I'd be a long grip. I can still hit this, but this is about the actual range of where I can go about taking a step for a cut. Now for a thrust, obviously that's not true. I can go a little farther with that. But that's the difference between cuts and thrusts also is that, well, thrusts have more range than cuts. If you play at absolute maximum ranges, the thrust is always going to have a few inches on a cut, unless you're fighting someone that's got monkey long arms. So if I'm out here like this, and let's say this tree is someone I want to close on and hit, if I take a step, my first hand's going to come up to where I think I need it to be, second hand's going to be there, right back into the spot I want it to be. If I want to go a little closer, maybe to here, again, right where I want it to be. Now, if I'm here like this, blocking somebody and I back up, this hand comes back one, back again to that same spot. Now, obviously not always going to throw that same straight cut kind of thing. Sometimes you might do a thrust, so you may back out to here, you might come back to that, you might come out to here and do one like that. There's a lot of things you can do with it. But the idea is to get used to moving every time you take a step, move your hands at the same time. The more you do that, the more it becomes second nature. It's really awkward at first. If you're in this grip and you close on somebody and people do us the time, you get to here, don't try to throw this. You're just going to hack somebody. If you get to here and you're not in the right hand grip still, move it, and then throw it, so that you can actually make that work. Don't worry about getting it absolutely perfectly right early on. You know, worry about getting to the right spot somehow, some way. If you're doing pedal work and do it wrong, just reset and do it again. Do it slowly, work on getting the form right. It's not important that you do it fast to start. You know, you probably heard the adage that, you know, slow is fast and fast is smooth kind of thing. So if you work on doing this slowly and smoothly, the speed comes with it eventually. So, but the trick is getting your brain programmed to want to do these kind of things right off the bat. Get the range. So, you've got a 6-foot lever. You don't need a ton of arm strength to obviously throw shots at all. All that will come with body weight just shifting into your shots. So you don't have to worry about that to start. We'll go over that later sometime. But right now we're just going to do ranges, hand grips, and a couple things with attacks. So if I'm out roughly to here, this is a real easy range for a thrust. I can still throw kind of a cut with a half step kind of thing right there. That's a good range. You're probably looking at about 8, 9 feet, about 8.5 feet. It's a good place to start with a PEL. If you want to do completely out of range, you can back up to 12 feet and worry about taking like a stepping in lunge and then step in and work on ranges. But generally, most people are going to engage around 9 feet or so. At that point, if this was a shieldman, they're already in range. They should be feeling that little spider sense in the back of their head kicking off, that they need to come get you. You should also be feeling that at that point, because you're also under threat, just not in quite the same way. So you want to get to the point where you can basically make them somewhat uneasy, and you should be able to live in that space. If you can do that, then that'll make things a lot easier, because then you're not worried about it. So when they get to here, the first time that they move, if they come to you, you're going to take a hand up, usually about to here on the first step, start to cheat over to whatever side you think that they're going to go to block something, and again your hand to have a fit, and then bring the other hand up and join the block. Most sword and shields being right-handed, you're going to be able to get in a good position for that. If this was, again, the shield, I can get to here, that still leaves me this shot after a block, or I can go to here, come back around and do that shot on a backhand, all while keeping a defense in place. It's important as a polearm to remember that your offense and your defense are the same thing. So you don't want to just throw shots endlessly, and you don't want to just sit there endlessly. Neither thing is really good. You need to think things through on how are you going to get the shot and the block. And one of the favorite things I have from my jiu-jitsu days is submission, or position over submission. You don't try to submit somebody until you've got the proper spot. The proper spot in this case is get the block, get the positioning you want to throw a shot. If I can get up on someone's shield from here, and their shield's right here, I'm in their corners here, and their short arms on that side. Most people are right-handed. So if I get out here and I block across the corner of that shield, so their corner on a typical heater would be out here. Round shields are similar, center grips are somewhat similar, but easy one is a lot of places, maybe not the outlets, but most places have a lot of strapped heaters for shields. If you block off the corner of it, a flat snap that comes around, easy block. If it's a wrap, it's a little bit deeper block. If it's a backhand, it's just this block. So you can do all these quick blocks from here, just from a kind of close, somewhere between a close grip and a mid grip, depending on how far away you are from the person. You can do a mistake as a mid grip here, by the way, and it'll work just fine. But a close grip is a little quicker, a little easier. So if I'm here like this, if they leave something super open, I can throw the shot. I still have the flat snap covered. The backhand will be covered because you're throwing through that space. The only things you have to worry about are a leg wrap and a body wrap, more or less. So if they're sitting back on their heels for whatever reason, you can maybe throw that shot. If it doesn't go, immediately drop it into this block. So bang, bang. You know, that'll work pretty good. If you catch the block first, you can do that. And if you do catch that block first, you can do a side step out here to get a deeper shot from the back of their head. The footwork, to get some of that to work, I'm going to do at a different point. That's a little more complicated to add into things. This one, pretty much just worry about doing hand grips. You know, get your ranges right, get your hand grips right. You can make everything else work from there. So, very simple footwork. To go with that is just you're mostly in front of the person. You can sidestep laterally. If they step in, that makes it a little better. You don't have to take a charge head on, generally speaking. If you're doing this in a melee, you're not going to get a lot of side movement anyway if you're in a line of people. So you can't really go out there and just run crazy everywhere anyway. So kind of get used to using the idea that if you're in a line and there's a person right here, I can maybe do this kind of thing real tight, but I can't really, like, you know, I can't run way over here somewhere or something. So you need to be able to do in maybe a 4-foot space, be able to move around in that space so you can block. Try not to block like this. That gives it angles too close, they can come right into you. If you can, try to reach out some. If you don't feel like you have the forearm strength for that, keep in mind that you should be using your shoulders somewhat. If you've done any rapier, you know that they tell you not to use your arm for your strength, use your shoulders for your strength. Similar concept. If I'm out here using my arms a bunch, they're going to get tired. If I use my shoulders a bit more, that's not going to be a problem. And realistically, if after a day of fighting polearm your arms are tired, you probably did something wrong. It really shouldn't be. The rest of you should be tired. Your arms shouldn't be. The only thing that really comes about from being a full day of like melee fighting in a war is just throwing thrusts will wear out this arm a little bit over time. But overall, both arms are usually pretty good to go because I'm not really using a lot of arm strength for anything. You know, in armor, I'm close to 300 pounds, and that's way more than is necessary to kill somebody. If you weigh, let's say 150 pounds, and then in armor you add 30 pounds, you're 180, it's an 1.25 inch wide stick. If you apply the forces properly, no one wants to get hit with 180 pounds of motion through a 1-inch area. That'll be plenty hard enough to kill anybody in our game. If they don't, they're probably being thick if you did everything right. So, if you're out here like that,